Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning,
Good
whatever it is.
afternoon.
Happy Friday.
Happy yay. What did I say? Not Friday. It's Friday
Did
now.
you just learn that?
Yes,
Did
I
you just
did.
learn that, Casey?
Listen, okay? I'm behind when it comes to all of the thing. It's funny, I was watching, I'm not going to tell you which reality TV show because I'm not normally guilty in watching these, but Aaron has been giving me a lot of grief because there's this one that I've been watching and they're using the word ick a lot in it. Like, oh, he gave me the ick. And I'm thinking, I know what that means when you are, well, it's been years, but when I did the dating scene, there would be something this person would do and I'd be like, oh gosh, like I'm instantly not attracted to this person because of that. But they didn't have a word associated with it. And I love that they use that word. But now I feel like I'm not allowed to use that word because,
Because you missed out on your opportunities to get the ick.
yeah, no, that's okay. I'm glad.
No.
I'll never want to be in the dating scene ever again. But I'm learning all these new words. And if I use them around Tori, she says, you give me the ick when you try to use those words. So I won't use them anymore.
What earrings are you wearing today?
They're matching my dress because we're March right now.
We are in March. We're just post St. Patty's Day, so that's awesome.
Yeah, and I am in like close to 80-degree weather right now.
Nice, because you've been freezing over there for a while.
I know. What earrings are
I'm
you
wearing
my your booby earrings.
my female empowerment earrings.
Yes.
Yeah, my little boobies, the little tassels for our special lactation consultant that we're chatting with today. I figured they were appropriate. Actually, that was your suggestion, and I listened to you.
I know you did a good
I'm
job.
smart and I listen to Casey.
Yeah, she's gonna love those. I hope she realizes that you're wearing boobies on your ears right now.
If she doesn't right away, maybe she'll see it in post and because I'm not going to be like, "Hey, did you see my boobs?"
I wore them just
I know
for
you
you.
like those because that's your job, right? No.
I am excited to have her on. I know we've had a few different professionals talking about this topic, but I think the more resources and knowledge in this arena is necessary because there's not very many resources out there. I'm learning, right? If somebody is interested in inducing, it's not easy. And having somebody that you can confidently lean on and have them guide you through it, I think is crucial. So I'm really excited to hear what Alyssa has to say because I know.
Especially inducing lactation is such a unique thing. And I think lactation consultants are probably a lot like therapists. Like there's lots of different ones, but there's different right ones for everyone. You don't always connect with the first person that you talk to. And so I'm happy to have multiple resources to share with people so that they can find somebody that will help them achieve their goals in feeding their baby. And it's just an exciting time, an exciting thing to talk about. Very stressful, can be overwhelming, emotionally charged. So the more resources and empowerment we can give to parents to help them have success on their lactation journey, I think obviously the better.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited to connect with her today.
All right, let's see if she notices my earrings. I bet you she won't. Welcome to Surrogacy is a podcast. Alyssa Schnell, we're so excited to have you. We've been talking about you all week, actually, leading up to this podcast, and the resources that you offer, because there really aren't a lot of resources for intended parents who want to nurse their babies and want to be able to partake in the lactation even in a non-traditional way. So your experience is super special in that that's kind of your focus. So I would love to welcome you and have you share a little bit about your background and how you have resources and the support you offer for parents that want to induce lactation.
Sure. Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. So I guess my story started, I have two children by birth, my third by adoption. I breastfed my two children by birth, and as soon as we started thinking about adoption, I knew right away I wanted to breastfeed. It was something that was so important and valuable to me with my children by birth, and I wanted all my children to have that opportunity and of course that bonding that comes with it. So this was nearly 20 years ago when we were expanding our family by adoption, and as you said, there's not a lot out there now. Well, certainly a lot less then. So I used my researchy skills to find all the information I could on inducing lactation. And I also was very fortunate because I had my own personal experience to go from many parents who are non-birthing parents. It's their first baby, so they don't have that as well. I
Mhm.
ended up having a really amazing breastfeeding experience with my child by adoption. And at that time, I was a La Leche League leader. I was a volunteer breastfeeding support, like peer counselor at that time. And I was helping people that way. But I wanted to take it to the next level, to be able to help people on a more clinical level. And that's why I became an international board certified lactation consultant, or an IBCLC. And since then, for the past 15 years, I've been focusing my practice on inducing lactation. So my clients are adoptive parents, intended parents, and same-sex female couples where both parents want to share the nursing relationship. And
That's
most of that
so
is via
cool.
telehealth because I have clients from all over the world.
Wow.
Yeah, well, you might be the only one out there that's able and willing and has the resources to support people in these unique situations because they aren't, your typical everyday situations.
Right. Most lactation consultants may see one or two clients a year who are inducing lactation. For me, this is my bread and butter. This is what
Yeah.
seeing every day. And it's my heart, it's my passion. It's
Yeah.
so important to me because I've been in those shoes and I just felt alone in the wilderness when I
Yeah.
was going through this. And I don't want people to feel alone or unsupported or without information that they can feel comfortable or rely on.
I think that's the key is passion driven. Sunshine and I being experienced surrogates and in this industry, we were passionate about spreading the word and educating anybody who would listen about, all the ins and outs of surrogacy. And so having somebody passion driven in an industry that, they want to be able to bring forth education of how to do this is huge. So I'm curious for those who don't understand, can you kind of like the nuts and bolts of what does it mean to induce lactation for somebody who maybe doesn't know anything?
Yes. So inducing lactation means bringing in milk production without a recent pregnancy and birth. So in a typical lactation scenario, the hormones of pregnancy prepare the breast for making milk, and then the hormones of the birth tell the milk, oh, it's time to start coming in and start producing more milk. Well, without that, we can still make milk, and that's what inducing lactation is. So we basically are simulating that process to the best of our ability. It's not going to be quite the same. There's a couple of major differences between inducing lactation and a typical lactation. One is with inducing lactation, there typically is less milk production. We expect that most people who induce lactation will make some milk, but not all the milk their babies need. So there's going to be some supplementation with donor milk or formula. The other difference is right after someone gives birth, a few days later, whoosh, the milk comes in. That does not, I wish it did, but it does not happen like that with inducing lactation. With inducing lactation, the milk comes in much more slowly. And as a result, we often start to bring it in before the baby comes to take a lead time to start building that production. So even though we know we're probably going to supplement, certainly we want to have as much milk as possible by the time baby comes. So we start bringing it in generally with a breast pump. So the process of inducing lactation involves some kind of physical stimulation of the breast, some combination of breastfeeding, pumping, and manual stimulation of the breast. We can add in some medications and herbs and other techniques to boost the effectiveness of those physical techniques.
Okay. So 20 years ago is when you first went on your induced lactation journey and there weren't resources out there for you. What did you do?
I know.
How did you do it? And what would you do differently now versus then?
Yeah. Um, There were some resources, there just were less.
Hmm.
And I'm such a researchy person that I did find them because I was very, very committed to it. But and the approach I used back then, sometimes people are still using that approach, but we have learned a lot. I have learned a lot, so we can do even better today.
Do you feel like majority of the intended parents or the families that you're helping in this regard, do they need to help stimulate that, have a medication that they're taking most often, or are there the more natural routes that work and you're not needing to that take that medication to help that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of people prefer to go more natural, especially when there's been a history of fertility treatments that people's bodies have gone through a lot and they're kind of done with that. Um, and I will say that the primary method of inducing lactation is the stimulation of the breast. But without using pharmaceutical medications, the milk production is likely going to be very low. And so, and for some people, and this is always the starting point of inducing lactation, what does success look like for you? So for some people, success means any amount of milk, even if it's drops, is amazing and they're excited about it. And for other people, success really means making more in the ounces category, making a more substantial amount. Many people feel like, wow, this is a lot of work if I'm just going to make a few drops here and there. So if people feel like a few drops is not going to be worth their effort, then I do encourage them to use pharmaceuticals. I will say that many parents have told me that the pharmaceutical medications used to induce lactation are nothing like what they went through in all of their fertility treatments. So, and there's also ways that we can do it in a more natural way, in the sense of like we can use bioidentical hormones. We can, there's a medication, we'll probably talk more about this as we go on, called domperidone that releases prolactin, which is your primary lactation hormone. And the cool thing about the domperidone is it's not an artificial hormone, it's just helping your body release its own natural hormone so that we can use a bioidentical hormones. We can use domperidone to release our own natural hormones, so we can keep it as natural as possible, especially if that is a priority. If there's a priority of minimizing medications at the same time wanting to make milk, we can kind of marry those two in a way that's going to meet both those goals.
What are some of the side effects of medications like domperidone that people might be reluctant to want to try them?
The primary side effects of domperidone are weight gain and headaches. The headaches, in all my years of doing this, there's only been a couple of situations where somebody has stopped it because of it. Usually the headaches are mild, you take ibuprofen, and then as your body acclimates, they go away. Weight gain, I think, is a tricky one because also the hormones cause weight gain. And also, and I don't know if there's been research on this with intended parents, but there's research that shows adoptive parents, as they're waiting for their babies, gain weight. Also research that fathers gain weight when
Yes.
their wives. So there's that sympathy weight that I kind of wonder, like, does domperidone get some of the blame for things that it's not caused by? Because I think that's a lot of fear of people of gaining a lot of weight. But then there are tips and tricks too. Like, I've learned all the tips and tricks to help people minimize all these side effects as well. I think the biggest concerns is not so much the common side effects, but some fears around domperidone. So there are reports of cardiac arrest, and this comes from very old studies. So domperidone is originally a gastrointestinal medicine, which had this happy side effect of increasing milk production that we're taking advantage of. So domperidone was given intravenously, way higher dosage than we would ever use for lactation, to men who were in their 80s who were getting chemotherapy and they were having nausea. It was used to treat nausea. These were elderly, they were men, they were having much higher dosage. And some of them, and they were people who were already at risk for cardiac issues, and some of them did have it. As far as the demographic that we're talking about here, women under age 60 without a history of cardiac arrhythmia, the risks, unless they're taking a medication that's maybe contraindication, the risks are nil. Yeah, it's unfortunate that that there's a lot of scary information, and part of that comes from, this is another big issue, is that domperidone is not an FDA approved medication.
That was going to be my second question, is how hard
Yes,
is it
yes.
to get? And my
Oh
understanding it's a
gosh.
little hard.
This is the bane of my existence. Um, and just to clarify, domperidone is a lethal medication in every other developed country. In many of those countries, available over the counter. So for my clients that I've worked with who are very lucky to have friends and relatives in other countries, and they say, "Can you go to the pharmacy today and pick up some domperidone and send it to me?" That's the easiest way to get it. But that's not the case for most people. And so one of the things that I offer my clients is resources on how to get it. So most people will get it from an international online pharmacy. Some of them require a prescription, most of them do not. And so that's also very important to make sure that, as I just said, it's a safe medication, but there's always people who have contraindications. So it's really important to be working with a professional, or making sure you're having evidence-based information that domperidone is safe for you. So for all of my clients, I'm always screening them to make sure that it's a safe medication for them. And then I secondly provide them with the information I use so they can check me. Because I mean, I'm here for healthy moms and babies. I don't want to do anything that's going to make anybody have a risk for health issues.
Yeah, no, I get that. What would you say, what factors make inducing lactation more successful?
Yeah, there are a bunch of factors, and some of them are things people have control over, and some of them they don't. Like if someone has a previous pregnancy and successful lactation experience, that certainly makes it easier for them to induce lactation. And that is what it is. There's nothing we can do about that. And then there are some choices that parents can make. One of them has to do, I mentioned earlier, about using the pharmaceutical medications. I would say another one, and I'm probably very biased, but I think working with an experienced IBCLC is going to be super important to help guide through that process. Ways we choose to supplement: management of breastfeeding and supplementation. And this is, again, is where your IBCLC can guide you to how to do that in the best way. Using a pump that's appropriate. So there's lots of tips and tricks for making it as successful as possible. I see my role is helping parents make the most milk that their body is capable of doing within the limitations of what they're willing to do. So for example, let's say we generally recommend pumping 8 times a day for the 6 weeks before baby comes. That's not realistic for every person. And there are ways I can, again, tips and tricks to help get in the alternatives to pumping 8 times a day. And sometimes we just say, well, when your baby comes, the baby's going to be breastfeeding at least 8 times a day, so it's okay. But we just kind of work with everyone where they're at and making a plan that's going to work for them in their lifestyle.
What would be that alternative? I'm so curious.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, you're getting some top secret information here.
Okay.
So, I mean, one is obviously just pump less and know that the expectations will be less.
Sure.
Another alternative would be to use a wearable type pump. A wearable, so this is something, if you're not familiar, is a pump that goes underneath the clothing. The both of you could be wearing, all three of us could be wearing wearable pumps and nobody would know. But those are not going to be as heavy duty as we would typically recommend for inducing lactation. But one kind of compromise is we use
Better than nothing.
Yes, we use a multi-user pump. That's a type of pump that's designed for establishing and growing milk production, which is what we're doing. Use that at home on the weekends and during the work, and maybe even lunchtime if you have more break. But when you can't take that break, use the wearable, because some milk removal is better than none.
Right.
The other technique, and this is honestly my favorite, you'll see I have some bias about this, is to do a little hand expression. And it could be just for a few minutes in the bathroom. You don't even have to collect it, but we want to be regularly throughout the day sending the message to the brain, oh, we need to make some more milk. And that hand expression, and I'm a huge fan of all the manual techniques, particularly hand expression, because it's free, it's accessible. Talk about natural, what's more natural than that? And hand expression is a tool that every breastfeeding parents should have, because you never know when you're going to be separated from your baby and your pump, and you need to have a method
Oh
that's
yeah,
available.
I can remember a few times after getting off of a plane and feeling like I was going to explode. I'm like, I go to my husband. I'm going to the bathroom right now to get this milk out of me because we didn't have the baby. We went on a little vacation, and I had my pump, but it was packed away. So I can tell you, it gives that relief when you need it to. Also in that moment,
I
as you're
used to I used to hand express only my first baby. I breastfed for over a year, and I didn't have a pump. A pump didn't I couldn't find one that I liked, so I did hand express, and I could fill like a 14-ounce bottle just like nothing with a hand
Okay, that's
express.
not typical results, just so people
no,
know, but that's fantastic.
I'm like, oh,
exactly.
thank God.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
and then move
relief.
on with the day. But that was the only thing that really worked for me. The pump didn't work as well. Well, this was a long time ago. This was in 1999. So um, I don't know. Pumps have come a long way since
Yeah, they
then.
have.
And I didn't have a medical grade pump. I tried something I probably bought at Walmart or something.
Yeah.
It's like, this thing sucks. I'm going to just do it myself.
Yes, pumps have come a long way, and also how we fit the flanges, that cone-shaped part that goes on the breast. We've learned a lot even in the last couple of years about, and I think some of the people like yourself, Sunshine, who said the pump never worked for me. It wasn't the pump, but it was the flanges weren't fitting properly, and I even seen this in my office, like pumping, nothing's happening, get the right size flange, and squirting out. So this is something, again, you
That's
can
so
do on your
satisfying.
own.
I
Yes, you
know.
could do on your own, but I always recommend working with a lactation consultant to help with that.
Yeah, it's definitely not something as natural as it is. It's not something that comes naturally to everyone, and understanding how it works and the sizing of the phalange. Like, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, how it's supposed to fit. And I guess that's your job, is to
That's
be
the
that expert.
professionals. Yeah. And
Yeah,
those
I mean, you hear that
resources.
about breastfeeding in general, is that it's supposed to be natural.
Yeah.
And one explanation that I heard that really makes a lot of sense is, let's say you wanted to learn how to ride a bicycle, but you'd never really seen people ride bicycles before, how difficult that would be. Well, that's, I think, a lot of what happens in breastfeeding and pumping in our culture, is we don't see it growing up or, out and about very regularly. So even though it's natural, it can be hard at first because it's not just in our culture.
Yeah. Well, and if
It's
the baby is
unfortunate.
tongue tied or you're having issues with, the baby latching on, then you as a parent start to feel all this guilt. And I think that also can add to the emotional component for families that are trying to induce lactation or have it, but then milk's not coming in at the pace that they were hoping for. What type of, I guess, emotional support do you offer up to intended parents when they're dealing with that, more of that emotional side of, I want this so bad, but maybe it's not working out the way they want it to?
Yeah. It is an emotional investment, and sometimes investments pay off and sometimes they don't. And so that is really hard. And I understand that nobody comes to inducing lactation through the easy road.
Yeah.
And I think that that is part of the role of the lactation consultant, to provide not only that clinical support, but emotional support and understanding as well. And I think a big part of that for me is just being there, that availability, that ongoing support throughout is really important. So that somebody's having a struggle, right away, immediately they know who to call, who to talk to, who's going to be there to help them know what they can do.
What does that typically look like? Okay, so somebody, we have you as a resource. They reach out to you. They set up that first consultation to understand what this looks like. What does that support from kind of the beginning to the end look like as far as time frame is concerned? And you're recommending 6 weeks, did I hear that correctly, prior to baby getting there, starting the stimulating process, or is it earlier than that you recommend?
Yeah, so the way I approach inducing lactation is in 3 steps. The first step is simulating pregnancy, basically. It's not a very time consuming step. We're really just trying to this is when the hormonal medications come into play. We're trying to grow and develop the mammary tissue as would happen in a pregnancy. In other words, we're trying to get that milk making factory up and ready to go, as happens in a pregnancy. And that's step one. Step two is what you just mentioned, that pumping that happens typically 6 weeks or so. And this is, again, negotiable. It could be shorter or longer, and this is what we talk about between the lactation consultant and the parent. But step two, 6 week-ish, and then step three starts when the baby comes. So when I work with clients, I like to do a minimum of 4 consultations. One at the very beginning, where we kind of talk about that overall plan, but focus on step one. Then we meet for the second time to focus on step two. The third time, we don't meet at the start of step three because that's the day the baby arrives. They don't want to meet with me that day. So we straddle that. We meet like a week or so before the baby comes. And at that point, we know how much milk the parent is producing, and we make a plan for supplementation. And then we meet a fourth time after baby comes because we have this new data point that's the baby. And then there's emails, check-ins in between, because I never want a client to be doing whatever their work is to do their plan, and it's not progressing, and then they just keep doing it. I want to make sure, okay, let's check in, make sure things are progressing as we hope. If they're not, then we troubleshoot, try to figure out, okay, how can we get things back on track? And most of the time we can. Honestly, sometimes we can't. Sometimes the parent does everything they possibly can, everything right, so to speak, and things don't progress.
Yeah.
Which is really, that's a hard situation. That comes back to that emotional support. The good news is that there are alternatives. So let's say inducing lactation is not going as expected or as needed. Parents can use donor milk, and sometimes the gestational carrier will provide that. There's also other safe or also unsafe ways to get donor milk, and so we want to make this is where the lactation consultant, unless it is the gestational carrier, I think that's a pretty safe bet. But there's ways to safely use donor milk from somebody in your community, and there's also opportunities for breastfeeding without bringing in milk. And I'll share, I guess, a couple of those. One is nursing for comfort and connection. So similar as somebody might use a pacifier to meet that sucking need and to soothe and comfort their baby, a parent could put the baby to the breast. Not every baby takes a pacifier, and not every baby is going to be interested in comfort nursing. Yeah. The other option is to use a nursing supplementer. SNS is what it's often called. And I will show you here, for those of you on video, here's one example. Here's a couple of examples. So you can see they look a little different. Some kind of container for the milk or formula. This one has a soft bag. This is a hard plastic container. It is literally just a baby bottle. And then the idea is there's some kind of container and then a feeding tube that leads to the nipple. So it leads to the nipple like this. So the baby latches on to the feeding tube and the nipple at the same time. That feeding tube serves as an external milk duct, delivering the milk or formula to the baby. So if somebody is making some milk, a little bit of milk, no milk at all, the baby can still exclusively feed at the breast. And that's going to create that bonding, that connection. There's also some developmental benefits of nursing babies as far as the development of their oral structures and even their vision. It's beneficial to nurse babies because if you think about how you hold a baby at one breast, one of the baby's eyes is on top and they're going to use that to focus. You switch to the other breast, the other eye is on top, so it helps their vision development. And then of course you can see how it would affect their oral development as well and reduce the risk of orthodontia and speech impairments. So it's really
wow. I just learned something new.
Yeah, I had no idea that was so important for oral development. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's very neat. I have so many questions, and I know that, okay, so if we have our clients and our journey coordinators are managing accordingly and the intended parents have said, I really want this resource, should we be introducing them to you at 3 months post them being, the surrogate being due to deliver, 4 months? Like, what would that time frame be for that very first consultation?
It is nice to be able to physically start the process of inducing lactation around the end of the first trimester.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, well, I mentioned we're trying to simulate pregnancy, so we're never going to get those 9 months in, right?
Sure.
But we can get as many months as we can for the breast to grow and develop, to make that milk making factory as big as we can. Although the parent, if they're interested, could even connect with a lactation consultant earlier just to kind of get a plan and then get all the pieces in place, all the tools and devices ready so that they can start as soon as they get to the end of the first trimester. But also, I'll say anytime.
Okay.
Like, let's say the baby is due in a month. Okay, we can work with that. Like, and this really comes down to a lot of the things we learned with adoption, because there's often not even any options, right? We don't know, we don't have that 9 month lead time. So the way I work is a very flexible approach. So even if the baby's already arrived, and I've had clients like that the babies come, they want to breastfeed. Okay, we just meet them where they're at. So I would say the most relaxing way to do it is to start at the end of the first trimester, and certainly the way to bring in the most milk before baby comes. If we start later, it doesn't mean there's going to be less milk. It just means less milk when the baby comes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And all these tools, I guess I didn't even realize that there are these tools that you can, kind of simulate a breast, and having that be a resource where the baby is starting to get the idea of this is what this is going to be for them. So I think that's really great too.
Yeah.
I've heard that there's some controversy. Like some people like the SNS and some people don't for different reasons. I can't imagine why it's not beneficial, but what are some reasons why people are resistant to using the SNS?
Yeah, it is difficult to use at first. I think for almost everyone it is. And if you think about for anyone who's learning to breastfeed for the first time, there's a learning curve with that too. Then you add in this little feeding tube in addition to learning to breastfeed, it can be hard at first. And this is where it's really important to get support, ideally both from an IBCLC, and if you have peers that have used it successfully, to see somebody using it and using it successfully can make a big difference. And combining good information and support with time. Give it some time, give it a week or two. So generally, we hate it until we are so grateful for it and we love it. And I know of parents who actually saved their SNS after their babies weaned because they were so grateful that it was the bridge that gave them that ability to breastfeed. So I would say get professional support and give it time, give it time. Oh, another piece, we actually surveyed parents online about what the biggest key to success with the SNS was. It was partner support.
That's key.
Yes, very, very important. And the partner can be supportive in several ways. One of my favorites is washing all the parts and filling them up. So doing all that kind of work. So for the nursing parent, it's a grab and go kind of thing. And the other thing that they can do is in those early weeks when it is really hard, the breastfeeding parent just latches the baby, just as any parent would. And the partner is the one that deals with the feeding tube and helps get that, placed and everything. Eventually, it needs to be a one-person job, and it can be. But to be that second pair of hands to help with it in those early days is really important. So I really encourage partners to be involved. And a lot of times, they're actually really excited about it because they're like, I thought I couldn't really help with breastfeeding, but actually I have a really important role here. And and then the dads who are engineers or physicians or whatever, they're like, oh, this is so cool. So like, I think a lot of it too is the attitude of feeling excited about it, that it really does open up a door. I love the SNS. I think it's such a great thing, and I hope that more and more people can have success with it, because it really improves long-term breastfeeding outcomes when there's that need for supplementation.
It's so good. So you mentioned the one component is that these families are able to talk with other people who've used it and had success. So with your resources, do you have any support groups, social media groups where they get to go in and kind of talk amongst each other and share their testimony?
Yes, I do offer a free online support group,
Okay.
and it's twice a month, and it's available to both parents and professionals. Some of the parents on there are my clients, some are not. I love it when my colleagues come because that just elevates things, right? Then you're not only getting my experience, but you're getting, more than one. It's like really a bonus situation to get like two or three lactation consultants in one, and then the parents supporting each other is just, I mean, I'm often so, I'm sure you've experienced that in your support groups, like so touched by the kinds of warmth and caring and support, and just feeling like, oh, there's somebody else who's doing this too. And some of them have connected, outside the group to support each other. So I love that.
Yeah, so good.
I love that too. I think it's so important because having somebody else that's in it and not feeling alone has got to be the most empowering thing. And the scariest thing when you feel like you are alone and doing something and you're like, I'm putting in a lot of effort. Is this going to be worth it? Is it even like, why am I even bothering? Sometimes you need somebody to carry you through those feelings of self-doubt and discouragement.
Well, another thing that comes to my mind, and I'm just really curious about, we have often actually where the surrogate steps in and says, I would love to pump for my intended parents, and the parents are eager and excited to go that route. But pumping, as you know, is different than having a baby, being able to actually physically breastfeed. That stimulation is different. So maybe the surrogate had no problem breastfeeding her own kids, but now she's only pumping, and maybe the milk production's not coming in as fast and what she was hoping for. Do you support, the clients of a surrogate if she wants to get some extra support and information and guidance on how to produce more milk?
Being exclusively pumping
Yeah.
surrogate.
Yeah, yeah, there are definitely some tools for establishing milk production with a breast pump.
Okay.
And we can help intended parents, sorry, surrogates. Well, we can help intended parents,
Yeah,
obviously, we're
it's helping
talking
them
about them.
too.
By
But
helping the
yes,
surrogates.
but we can also help surrogates to be as successful as they can with bringing in milk with a pump. And sometimes there's even things we can do at the end of pregnancy to help the milk come in more quickly and more abundantly.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I've worked with both intended parents and their surrogates.
Great. I love that. I love that. Okay, no, last question because I'm just curious your thoughts on this. And Sunshine might have more questions, but we have surrogates who say, I'm not planning to pump. And we know that milk's coming in regardless. And I had a surrogate recently who said, I'm just not going to pump. I'm going to wrap. I'm going to use bandage. I'm going to try to drink some supplements that will help stop the milk from coming in. And then she came back to me several weeks later. She was like, first of all, that week was brutal. And if my one thing that I would do differently is I would have pumped a little bit to release that pain that she was feeling during that time that the milk was drying up. Do you have any tips for any of our surrogates that are listening who aren't planning to pump and want to be able to quickly dry up their milk? I know, ironic, here we are talking about how do we induce, but I know that there are women out there who don't plan on pumping, and it would be nice to be able to have those resources for them too.
Yeah, yeah. I think she was on track, like, remove the milk to create some relief. And I wonder if she was talking about maybe drinking sage tea that slows down milk production. But if you really want to slow it down quickly, it's pseudoephedrine. I can write it down. It's a stuff in Sudafed. It's a decongestant. So decongestant dries up your sinuses and it dries up your milk. So,
Okay.
so generally we're like, stay away from that if somebody wants to lactate, but we can also take advantage of that. And a few doses of that should really tamp things down.
Interesting. Okay. And I think I have heard that before, but it's good to know. And I
Man,
agree.
I tried that. I tried it and nothing helped me.
Oh, really? It sounds like you had a
True.
tremendous milk production if you were able. Most people do not express 14 ounces in one sitting. So I would
Yeah.
just say for reference, like 3.5 to 5 ounces in a sitting is typical for a birthing parent.
Okay.
Yeah. I was lucky that way. I couldn't like years after I could probably still pump a couple ounces today and I haven't been pregnant for so many years, but I I could have been one of those people that feed the neighborhood probably.
Yeah, you might have been a wet nurse in another day and age.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and it was fun breastfeeding too. It is such a sweet bonding experience. I think it's amazing that there are parents that are not giving birth to their babies, but that are still able to experience that bond and holding their baby and feeding their baby and being that source of life for your baby. I think is really special. So what is one of the things that came we were looking at is paste feeding. What is paste feeding and what are the benefits of that? What is
I wonder if they mean paste bottle feeding.
I don't know. Is it like how I don't know. I have no idea.
I've
The
never
only
heard of it.
paste feeding that I'm familiar with is paste bottle feeding. I don't know that there's
Okay.
anything associated with breastfeeding that's called paste breastfeeding.
Me neither. It came up on our questions from Sam and I was like, what is that?
I know.
I don't know.
Would you like me to talk about the paste bottle feeding or?
No, if it's not relevant, it's not relevant.
Yeah.
Well, it is a little bit relevant in the sense that it can be used so to when we're combining breastfeeding and bottle feeding. There's a risk when you combine breastfeeding and bottle feeding that it's going to make it more difficult to breastfeed. And one of the reasons that it can make it more difficult to breastfeed is when the flow is much easier from the bottle. Babies are smart. They're like, "Huh, I'm going to go for this easy thing, forget the breastfeeding. That's a lot of hard work." So we can slow the flow from the bottle by using paste bottle feeding. And basically what it involves is taking the bottle, and I'm going to grab a bottle here.
Yeah, that must have been what it is. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is related to breastfeeding,
Sure.
even though it's not.
Yeah.
So rather than, we typically bottle feed babies like this, right? Well, the gravity is moving that milk or formula from the bottle to the baby. There's no gravity in breastfeeding, and so that's why it makes it so easy. So we can take the gravity out of the picture by one way is to hold the baby fairly upright and the bottle as horizontal as possible. So it's only the baby's effort that moves the milk or formula from the bottle to the baby. And I love this way because babies are driving the feeding. So if the baby wants to suck and then wants to take a break, they just stop sucking and there's nothing flowing. And that happens with the breast. And wouldn't we all want to be fed that way to drive our own feed? It's more baby led versus
Yeah.
parent led. So I think a beautiful way that every baby should be bottle fed is using this pace method where the baby is in control of the pace of the feeding.
That makes sense because otherwise you're just like, I have to swallow it as fast as it's coming out or it's just going to go everywhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it's almost like force feeding.
What I
Yeah, and
wonder
I
if
know
that
nobody
has any-
intends that.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any correlation to like babies being extra gassy and having bubbles in their tummy and feeling uncomfortable when they're gulping it down when they're being bottle fed, like that. So
There
interesting.
definitely, you're exactly right. There is. And when I've had parents transition from the more traditional way we breastfeed, I'm so used to saying breastfeed, the way we traditionally bottle feed
Yeah.
to this paste feeding, they do tell me it's less gassy because they're not gulping and swallowing their own air. And the feedings tend to be slower and led by the baby when the baby's ready and able to
More
be
intentional. I
Yeah.
love that. Oh my gosh. I'm
So
learning
definitely, I'm
something.
glad I asked that question because I had no idea about any of that, and I do. When I think of feeding a bottle feeding a baby, you're holding them and the bottle is upright, and it does flow fast, and you can see. Yeah, if you're lazy like most people and want to do the least amount of effort and just be fed, then yeah,
Makes
definitely.
And there's research that shows that bottle fed people who are bottle fed have higher risk of obesity. And I wonder if this is also part of it, is that they tend to be overfed because it's flowing fast and they're not in control of, listening to their own cues to know haven't learned to listen to their own cues to know how to stop feeding, right?
Oh my gosh, it's like all kind of encompassing. You
I
think
know,
about that.
so many
you know?
light bulbs. So many
Yeah,
light
there's so many
Good, I'm so
layers
glad.
to this. Oh, that's
Man.
so good. What other things do you feel like you would like to share with our listeners, intended parents that are considering this, or surrogates who need assistance on this? What are the things that you feel like they need to know that we've not covered yet on this topic?
Great question. I think we've really covered a lot. I would reinforce that this is a special breastfeeding scenario, and you and your baby truly deserve the support of a skilled IBCLC. Don't go it alone. I think that's where frustration can happen.
Mhm.
So definitely work with an IBCLC. And I think that a lot of times what happens is people are considering it and they're not sure. Is it right for them? Um, Many people may have health issues or circumstances that may make them wonder if it's right for them. And I offer a free 15-minute phone consultation. And that's often what we talk about. Like, here's my scenario. What would inducing lactation look like for me? Is it possible for me? And we can usually figure that out pretty quick once I kind of get there. A lot of times people think, well, you've probably never heard of somebody like me. And because I've been doing this almost exclusively for the past 15 years, yeah, usually I have. And I can
Yeah.
say, this is what I've seen before when somebody in your circumstance.
And they must love to hear that they're
Not
not the
alone.
first of their situation that you've seen, because I know when my intended mother was trying to induce lactation, she had given birth to her daughter, and then I was carrying her son, and it had been about a year. Her daughter was a year old, and of course she was very independent and stopped breastfeeding too soon, and we wanted her to hang on so that she could keep producing milk, but she didn't. She was like, nope, I'm done. So it was a little bit harder on her to produce, and I know she got discouraged and overwhelmed, and she did get a little bit of support from what she was looking for. But I remember her asking for help at the hospital and asking for help from lots of people, and most of them were like, I don't know what to tell you. So she was kind of on her own on the internet figuring it all out, and I think it would have been really nice if she had had the benefit of someone like you that could have
Yeah.
helped her. I bet it would have been a lot easier for her, because I know it was so stressful for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have so many clients tell me that in the hospitals where their baby was born, they have never seen anyone induce lactation. And sometimes the information that the very well-meaning lactation consultants in the hospital give them is their mindset. I just want to be fair to them. Their mindset is not geared on this. So either they're thinking, you're probably not making any milk at all, or they're thinking the milk is going to come in the same way as if they gave birth. And neither one of those is true. But where the hospital-based lactation consultants or any lactation consultant can be super helpful is they can still have help with latching and positioning things. They can still help with access to local resources. So even if there is a lactation consultant who doesn't have experience with this, they can be, and I actually work oftentimes collaboratively with local lactation consultants. So I'm doing visits via telehealth, helping them get their inducing lactation plan up, and then the local lactation consultants do what they do best, is offering that support with local resources and latching and positioning and all of that. Like even Casey had mentioned earlier about tongue tie. I mean, I can potentially kind of give some guidance on that, but certainly much better to have somebody in person
Yeah.
who's going to put their hand in the baby's mouth and feel around and help you know what the providers are in your area and that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
These tongue ties and lip ties I'm hearing about
More.
so much more often these days. Are they more common now, or were they just not always diagnosed? Like, what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, tongue ties have been going on forever. In fact, there's stories of back in the days, midwives keeping their pinky fingernail really long and sharp. So as soon as every baby was born, they'd swipe their finger under the tongue. I know, we don't recommend that. It's very not hygienic. But I'm just saying that it has been around forever.
Sure.
Um, and now we are just kind of becoming more aware of it. So a lot of times those babies who were either having trouble latching or who had excess gassiness or causing terrible nipple pain or who weren't able to transfer the milk from the breast, all these can be due to tongue tie. Lip tie, this is something that is a little more unclear, the impact of lip tie on breastfeeding. I've actually there is some evidence that show they often go hand in hand, but I have only all these years only seen like a couple of babies where it was just a lip tie that was impairing breastfeeding.
It's
So, and oftentimes
interesting.
there are supports we can offer without having that tie released. And we didn't really talk about that, but there are doctors and dentists who will release that extra. So what a tongue tie is, maybe I should talk about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Or a
please
lip
do.
tie is that there's tissue that connects our tongue to the floor of the mouth. And sometimes if that connective tissue is too far forward or too thick, it impairs the mobility of the tongue. And the same, there's a connective tissue between the upper lip and the upper gum line. So if these things are too tight, that impairs that ability for transferring milk. And it can impact bottle feeding too. It generally impacts breastfeeding more so. Usually what I have seen in my practice is sort of borderline tongue ties, where they're having these problems because there's a tongue tie, but with just supports, positioning, sometimes exercising, usually that's enough to kind of get through that hump. And then, of course, as the baby's mouth grows, that restriction becomes less of an issue because the breast stays the same size.
Sure.
So, but sometimes they are so severe. In fact, my daughter by adoption, her tongue was connected all the way to the tip. I mean,
Oh
you
my
could, it's
gosh.
so easy to see. It looked like the top of a heart is what
Wow.
her tongue looked like. And it was pretty apparent that she was, regardless of breastfeeding, she was not going to function normally unless that was released. So sometimes it's super obvious. And tongue tie is not only an issue with breastfeeding, it can impact speech, chewing and swallowing. It can impact breathing because a normal tongue that has that mobility rests on the roof of the mouth. It keeps that palate nice and flat. If their tongue can't do that, the palates can become arched and that impairs the airway. So there's a lot of benefits to having it released, whether the baby is bottle feeding or breastfeeding, if it's severe.
Yeah.
If it's more moderate, as I see most of the time, oftentimes we can kind of do a wait and see kind of thing. If we can get feeding off okay, we can just keep an eye on it and watch for the child's speech and things like that as they get older.
It's wild
I'm
to think of
feeling
all the
suddenly
things.
hyper aware of my
I
tongue
know.
and how it's
I know.
attached to my mouth.
I look at
This is
people's
good.
tongue when they talk. It's because it's like a curse.
I really am. Well, and you think, okay, so I think for even with like miscarriage and loss, for so many women who are dealing with loss and miscarriage early on, years ago, my daughter is 19 now, and I had a friend who was struggling with infertility, but you didn't talk about it. You didn't, because you felt some shame. You felt like, what's wrong with me? And I wonder, when you're bringing a baby home or you're dealing with that struggle of baby latching on, you're not talking about it necessarily. So I just wonder if we're becoming more aware and asking more questions and being okay with like, hey, something's going on. And so now they're having more awareness of tongue tied and lip tied and being able to identify it quicker, right? And so not doing it alone and feeling like you're all alone on this island. So I love that there are resources, because you're right, there weren't not as many, definitely. Thank you so much. This was like eye-opening in so many ways, and I am just grateful that now we have you in our back pocket as a resource as we identify clients that might need this service, and I know that we will, and I just am excited that we have you in our corner now that we can say, you know what, who you should talk to. Let me introduce you to Alyssa.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you for
wonderful.
making this your work and for taking something that was so special and important to you and making it a resource for so many other people who can really benefit from all of the hard work that you put into learning all of these things and being so generous to share them. I'm
Thank
so
you.
appreciative.
Back at you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Alyssa, and we'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much. It was delightful to talk with you both.
you too. And we'll put your information below. So for anybody who wants and is interested in just reaching out, if they have questions or want to start this process, they have access to you.